Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We're on.
Excellent.
Welcome. Welcome to our kickoff event for the Ajax project. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself and start off the conversation?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lizzie. And it's nice to be here with you, Laura and Paula, too. I am Jessica Adler. I'm a history professor at Florida International University. And I am happy to be here today to kick off this fascinating and wonderful and enriching project. So we're going to begin with talking to Paula and Laura just about the overview of the project, and then we will move on to have a little bit of an insider's view of it, and finally talk to some of the veterans who were integral to making it happen. So I'm going to turn first to you, Paula. First, if you could give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and then start us off by telling us about the play and how and why it can resonate with current day veterans, and tell us a bit about the USC Warrior Bards program.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, I'm Paula Sismore. I'm a playwright, and I also am a playwriting professor at USC. And I got invited by Greg Thalman, who was actually the founder of Warrior Bards at USC. He's a classics professor. He invited me to be a part of this group. Warrior Bards at USC is an arts in action initiative. And this initiative offers veterans an opportunity to study the classic Greek plays and then to make a creative response to the plays. So it was the idea of Greg and some other members of the classics department to study these tragedies because, in fact, they were written by veterans. I think what few people know is that Greek had a universal citizen army. So every male citizen was conscripted and served in the army. So these plays were written by veterans. In fact, Sophocles was a general. And they were performed by an all-male cast, who, of course, were veterans. And they were performed largely for an all-male audience, who, of course, were veterans. So these plays had a great deal of resonance. They take on the stories of the aftermath of war. So what we do at Warrior Bards is we meet twice a week and talk about 4 or 5 plays, usually Ajax, Philoctetes, Agamemnon, Hecuba, and one other. And the discussion of the plays is interesting in terms of what actually goes on in the plays, but what is even more interesting is the discussion that the veterans have afterward. Because veterans see these plays in a different light than civilians like me. So the play Ajax continues to speak to us 2,500 years later. In Ajax, we learn that Achilles, the great warrior, has died, and the armor of the great warrior is supposed to be awarded to the next greatest warrior, and Ajax believes that should be him. Instead, the kings, Agamemnon and Menelaus, award the armor to Odysseus. And Ajax is absolutely outraged, and he plots vengeance against all of them. But Odysseus has a favorite. He's the favorite of Athena. And so she protects him by casting a spell on Ajax. And in a fog, he goes out and slaughters a herd of sheep and cattle and dogs because he believes they are the Greek army. He's hallucinating because of a spell that Athena has cast over him. When he wakes up and discovers what has actually happened and that he has gone off and essentially killed farm animals, he is absolutely humiliated. And he starts to question himself and question his heroism. And this leads to thoughts of suicide and, in fact, eventual suicide. So as you can see, the play is a play about heroism and a play about your worth as a human, your worth as a warrior. And it's a play about trying to live in the world now that war is over. And I think that this is something, and the veterans will tell you this themselves, that really speaks to them. So we do Warrior Bards year after year, and this year we have a new group. And we're actually performing on Friday the 13th, another group of scenes and monologues, and this time even some short stories that are illustrated with artwork. But it provides an opportunity for veterans to talk to veterans and to interact with the arts, which I truly believe in. Then we were asked by Lizzie to present a reading of this play at EST, and then I'll send this over to Laura because then she knows what happens next.
Thank you so much, Paula. That's very helpful. So, Laura, with that, I want to turn to you and just ask you to take us back to March when there's an ongoing Warrior Bards program. Ajax is in the works. What happened with the onset of COVID? And talk to us a little bit about the evolution of this specific project online.
Sure. So the Sunday that everything shut down was our performance date for a reading of Ajax with the Warrior Bards group. So that, of course, had to be postponed. And a few weeks later, Lizzie Ross contacted me and said, hey, I'm really excited and concerned about veterans at this time because everybody is so isolated. What can we create that can help maybe reach them and help reach out to them using perhaps the groundwork that we had already done? And so looking at the sort of challenges, as we know, about Zoom theater and trying to do classical plays on readings of plays on Zoom, we talked about, well, what made the project really interesting was not so much the scene work, although that's amazing because it's an amazing play and that's always exciting. And that's what I love is great plays. But what I found fascinating was listening to the veterans' experience with the play and talking about how the play related to their experience. So what we decided to do was to do the initial thought was some sort of like combination of scenes and conversation around it, and that became a sort of a much bigger project, which is now what you see before you, which is a website that discusses the design, not just the design of the play, but has a possible production mode for it, but also has scene work from it, performed by the veterans in the in the Warrior Bards and some other actors, all of whom are veterans, and a series of interviews that discuss the play and how important it is, and how it relates to their experience. And it was an incredible opportunity to work that EST provided to get all of us together to get to work on these plays, and then also provide hopefully some resources for veterans who are indeed isolated and struggling. And here are some people who have gone through what they have gone through and have been so generous and kind as to talk about their own personal experiences.
So I think actually, Laura, you've set us up really nicely for watching the video on the website. But before we do that, I want to just ask Lizzie, do you have anything to add from the perspective of EST and your involvement in the project?
One of the things that's really struck me while we're all separate and isolated is that we have this strong digital community now. We communicate digitally, and it is art and it is creative. And while it's not theater, it does allow us to explore who we are in the privacy of our own screens. So it was quite beautiful to watch this project sort of evolve. And everyone was so generous with their time and their feelings. I mean, they trusted us with the veterans trusted us with some really important moments of their life. And it really has been an honor to bring this together. It really has. I'm very thankful to everyone.
And we're grateful to be able to hear from veteran participants themselves shortly. But with that, I'm going to turn it to you, Lizzie, to play the video, and then we'll be back live with people.
Right. This should be, in the next moment, an introduction, that video that is actually on the website itself, explaining how the website is designed and utilized. So here goes. Let's see what happens. Bear with me. Hi, I'm Lizzie Ross. I am one of the co-artistic directors of Ensemble Studio Theater Los Angeles, otherwise known as ESTLA. We are a theater development organization, and we have regular programming in support of our community. in which we share our stage and our resources to help give voice to many who are deserving in order for them to reach a wider audience. And this past March 2020, we were scheduled to host members of the Warrior Bards program from USC in a reading of the play Ajax that was to be followed by a discussion with the US veterans involved. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit and our project needed to be postponed indefinitely. After a short while, we came to realize that the shutdown order would go longer than we had expected. And we also realized that the intention of our project was to be of service to those living with PTSD. And those very people would now be isolated and in need of a sense of community. So we devised a way to continue our project virtually. And it has come to be this imagined production that is hosted on this site for you now. Our idea was to create an imagined production for you to explore in 4 parts. There's a series of buttons at the beginning of each section that will take you to the other 3 sections. These sections include the first one that you are on now, which also houses a history of the play, information about Sophocles and the inheritance of war. Greg Thalman of the Classics Department at USC is also interviewed here to give some context both to the play and to the Warrior Bards program. The second section is an exploration of each of the characters and the US veterans playing that role. There's a character description for each, along with an image board of the costume that was created by our costume designer, Maggie Clappis. The characters' costumes reflect each of our own veterans' time in service and help to illustrate the long lineage of being a soldier. You'll also see that each actor has a video in which they introduce themselves, along with a personal biography and a gallery of images of themselves during their time in service. The third section is an exploration of the production designs for our imagined production. Our set designer, Amanda Knahans, has created a site-specific world where our play would take place. Like in the original script for Ajax, this is on a coast where land meets sea, and is punctuated by old military vehicles and planes embedded in the ground around a main stage of the tent. This tent is the main stage itself and houses an open fuselage of a military plane, with the stage's platform being that floor of the plane. Our lighting designer, Ken Booth, has created a design to enhance this world that includes the open night sky and practical lighting that sets us in the military world of Ajax. Our director, Laura Stribling, along with Mark Antonio Pritchett, have created sound beds to enhance and emphasize this world. All of our designers have included imagery that they have drawn from for inspiration, along with an artist's statement for you to read. Our fourth section has the excerpts of the play, which is from a translation by John Tipton. All of our actors are US veterans, and immediately following each act's excerpts, you will find a section that's titled, "Let's Talk About This." In this section, there's another video of the veterans discussing the text of the play that they have just performed and how it relates to their own experience in service. Our purpose for exploring this play with military veterans is to help build community around issues of PTSD and the long-lasting effects of war. By sharing and talking about our experiences, we remind ourselves not only that we are not alone, but that we are part of a long lineage of these difficult issues that go back throughout history. We encourage everyone visiting, not only the veterans, to consider this inheritance and reach out to others to converse and support one another. We're doing it here by using the art of theater and these ancient scripts as a jumping off point to move towards healing. At the end of all 4 of our sections, you will see buttons with information and links to resources to support those living with PTSD, thoughts of suicide, and other mental health issues. Our mental health is just that, health. And we hope that this exploration of Ajax helps us all support our own and each other's well-being. Thank you so much for exploring this play with us. And if you would like to know more about what we do and support this program and more, please visit our website at estllosangeles.org. And if you can, please donate so that we can continue this powerful and effective work. Thank you, and be well.
So with that, we are going to turn to our panel of actors, veteran actors. And I want to now direct the conversation to what actually happened during this production and your experiences being a part of it. I'm going to direct the first question to you, Nicholas, but I hope that others will feel free to chime in and share your thoughts as well. So we've sort of gotten the bird's eye view of Ajax and what this play is about, and the fact that it's 2,500 years old, written by and mainly, and in some senses for veterans. So Nicholas, I wonder if you can talk about your experience reading this play or other Greek tragedies or comedies, what it did for you as a veteran, how you relate to this literature as a veteran, and then talk too about your experience working with fellow veterans during that process.
Well, for me, when the process began, originally with Warrior Bards, I'd reached a place where I was tremendously isolated and I was very distant from even myself. So making the journey to begin reading Greek tragedies was just, hey, I love this stuff. I knew I liked it, but I didn't really realize that it was written by veterans for veterans. So it was kind of something that just a discovery that happened along the way. There was no awareness of what was going on, but something was going on. So I went from being around people in a room, reading a play, not knowing why I'm around people or how to interact with people, to all of a sudden discovering things about myself that I hadn't seen in a long time. And that's the work. The work is happening, but I'm just really engaging with veterans, writing for veterans and performing with veterans. So while I'm experiencing it on the page, it's actually happening around me with Warrior Bards, and again with the Ajax project. And each time I've come to a place closer and closer to realizing, wow, I'm a part of this. I'm a part of something that's larger than myself, and I have a role in this, and that role continues throughout the course of a lifetime. So that's been my experience thus far, particularly with Ajax. I can identify with the feelings of isolation, and even the thoughts of not being honored or not being perceived to have honor, and then what goes along with that.
Excuse me, sorry, I said your role in the production was Odysseus, is that right?
Yes, I played Odysseus.
And were there particular traits or characteristics of Odysseus that you could identify with too?
Yes, I can see that today. I mean, Odysseus has been through his own, odyssey, obviously, and journey. But then there is this favorite thing that happens with him. And I mean, throughout the course of that isolation that I just spoke to, throughout the course of the incredible journey it's been thus far, there has been that thing, for me. So I can relate that even finding Warrior Bards and now the Ajax project, that's something I'm grateful for, and I can relate as Odysseus may have, that there's always that something there, that provides that guiding force that leads me back to myself. Not every veteran has that, and that's why I relate to Odysseus and receiving the armor. Yes, there may be a question of whether I'm worthy of it or not as a veteran. Of course, we all are, and that's probably why we all can relate a little bit to Ajax's feelings.
Thank you, Nicholas. Diana, Terry, we spoke a little bit before the panel about readjustment to civilian life after service. I wonder if you could talk about your experiences readjusting to the civilian world and how this program and this production has helped that process. Terry, we'll turn to you first.
Okay, well, all I can say is when I was flying home from Bosnia, we flew in from Bosnia. We went to Fort Benning. Because we were landing on a 3-day weekend, our remobilization home took like a day. And then I found myself walking through the Atlanta airport and with just swarms of people. And I was looking around, I thought, I can't relate to anybody here. And it was just a really strong moment for me. And I think once you go through service, you know where you are, you know who you are, you know your unit. But when you're discharged from that, you're now floating in an ocean of the unknown. And I am finding that for many veterans, we're in a really important time, because instead of going to, one of the old clubs and sitting there and drinking a lot of beers and watching TV and not talking, which is what the old veterans clubs were like, we're now writing and we're talking if we're lucky. And if we're not lucky, we're still in isolation. So programs where veterans come together really in any aspect, but as writers or performers and talking about things, it lifts their soul, because there are so many levels and nuances to being a veteran. It's like Nicholas was just saying, Odysseus didn't know if he was worthy. And that's something that every veteran has experienced, but we don't talk about it because there's no one to talk about it to. But when veterans come together and we start talking, and then we continue that conversation with the community that is surrounding us, we can really breathe life into understanding. And I think that really breathes healing into a lot of veterans' lives as well. And
I know, Terry, you said you were in the chorus for the show.
I was, yes, just a little bit.
It's still important. And Diana, your role was, tell us what your role was in the show, and a little bit more about what Terry and Nicholas have already talked about, a sense of community, a sense of readapting to civilian life through the arts.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So I played the role of the messenger, and wow, I feel like the universe did, magically, I got this part for a reason, because the messenger was there to stop Ajax from committing suicide. And unfortunately, she was late. But I feel I have something important to say too. And like what Nicholas was saying, I could totally relate that you feel like you're not worthy, because I didn't go out to serve. I mean, I didn't go out and fight in a war. I'm a veteran, but I'm like, well, I'm not worthy because I didn't go and fight. But after I got out of the service, I had this longing and call where I still felt very much connected to the military world. I had dreams of fighting, and I didn't know how to reach out to my family. I didn't know how to talk to people. And reading these stories, I see that it's still very much an issue today, where you have so many veterans committing suicide because they have no one to reach out to. And they feel that no one is going to understand. So I guess there's where I come in as the messenger, where it's like, I know, I was there. I was there in that dark place. I know what it feels like. And luckily, I had somebody come and intervene, and they came in at a perfect time. And now I'm able to relate and talk to other veterans and be that messenger. I'm just very happy to be a part of this project. It's helping me heal, and I know it's going to help others heal, and it's a continuous thing.
Thank you so much, Diana. That's beautifully said. So it sounds like for all three of you who have spoken already, that this experience provided a sense of community, a sense of camaraderie, a sense of commonality. James, I'm hoping you can chime in, and Tucker, please feel free as well. James, you served in Iraq, and you talk in a video on the EST, on the website for Ajax, very powerfully about the various forces that led you to acting, that led you to the theater. Talk about the resonance of Ajax for you, and how theater, I guess, even if it's online, can heal, as some of your your colleagues are discussing.
Well, it's I feel very fortunate first to be a part of this project. The history of theater and storytelling is paramount to our society, and I believe that, especially with this play, telling the story of veterans and PTSD that has been through, soldiers of all nations and wars have, dealt with it through, since the beginning of war, I imagine. And it is a very powerful thing to have this vehicle to share these stories, not just theater, but like now with live theater, because you're able to reach a larger audience. I know it's not the ideal way, but I think it's important to share these stories. And I think the message that as veterans, we are not alone in our PTSD, and it's not mutually exclusive to veterans, but for me, theater has been this amazing outlet and very life-saving device for me. I'm able to get out all these negative emotions and these traumas that I've experienced in my life, especially with Ajax dealing with veteran suicide. Unfortunately, I've lost several people to suicide who are veterans. My grandfather, being a World War II veteran, left by his own demise, and so did my best friend, who was a Marine with me. And it's one of these things that I wish that I could have shown them Ajax, maybe even just the text first, and was able to be like, listen, man, you're not alone with these films. And I feel very fortunate to be with these other talented veterans who've shared their stories, because that's how we heal, And I believe these, like Ajax is this very strong, brave soldier, and yet he is dealing with these fears and doubts that are creeping in, and it terrifies him, and he loses life because of it by his own hands. And we can't stop it unless we talk about it. And that's the power of these arts, the power of theater and storytelling, to let people know that they're not alone. And perhaps like in sharing your vulnerabilities, it comforts other people. Because I used to believe that the strongest people were the stoic, weathering every emotion and not showing anything. And I really believe now the strongest people are the ones who are able to show their humanity to each other, so that we're, see that we're all in this together. Because I think that's what it's really about.
And what is more human than classical theater? You see how much has stayed the same throughout the history of humankind. So it sounds like there's a sense here of you're in community, not only with your fellow veterans who are participating as actors with you, but you're also finding community with the very characters themselves that you are acting, that you're sort of inhabiting as you act. Thank you, James. Tucker, I want to turn to you. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned that people with PTSD have trouble identifying their own problems, but they can often see it in others. So talk about how that thought relates to, I guess, some of the ideas that James and others have shared, and this idea of reaching back in time to find ourselves, to find characters that we can identify with, and sort of how that rule applies to this experience of reading Greek tragedy.
You know, those of us who have been in combat, um, either as commanders or as subordinates, have a unique perspective of war, and our training, understandably, is you suck it up, you drive through, we must accomplish the mission. Um, that is more important than, theoretically, it's more important than the personnel. And that is our culture. And we don't ask for help, we give help. And so it is very, very difficult for a warrior to come home, regardless of the theater, regardless of the war or generation, and realize there's something broken inside of me. Every war creates that disconnect. Wars have existed as long as men have walked upright. The weapons change, the adversaries change, but the consequences are identical. There is grief, there is tragedy, there is pain, there is death, there is ugliness, and uh, that is not normal. And if you are not affected by it, then there's something probably broken inside of you. But our culture requires us to drive on. Now, cultures change. In World War II, men came home who had seen things that are indescribable. And they put them in a closet and they closed the door and they didn't talk about it to their children or their wives. They just sucked it up. And yet they were broken inside and they lost quality of life for decades. And we knew about this forever. We called it shell shock. We called it soldier's heart. We called it combat fatigue. We called it PTSD. It's all the same stuff. There's nothing normal about combat. It's not, it will never be normal. And so to react emotionally to it is an understandable human response, but that is antithetical to what it is to be a soldier or a warrior. And that is the conflict. Um, as a child, my father was a Fulbright professor, and we spent 2 years in Greece. And I walked on those stages, those stone steps of the amphitheaters where Sophocles and Antigone, all of these plays were performed eons ago. Um, my brother, my youngest brother, was born in Greece, and you mentioned service is fundamental. Had Carl returned to Greece as an 18-year-old, he might well have been drafted into the Greek army. He was obviously an American citizen, born to American parents, but that was a reality. We don't we have surrendered the draft. I think to our detriment. There is something very, very fundamental about citizenship and universal service. To appreciate what it is to be a citizen, not to take our way of life and our benefits for granted. You don't have to be a warrior. There are a lot of ways to serve your country, but there should be universal mandatory service in my estimation. And I think that that was something that has served us for many, many decades. I'm not going to malign the volunteer army, the volunteer military forces today, but I think there's something very, very special about every American citizen getting some time to realize he is part of something much, much bigger than himself. Um, you talked about writing, Terry. I was I came home in 1969. In 1988, I was finally persuaded to ask for help because I was really circling the drain. And my therapist only treated policemen and combat veterans. And he said to me, Tucker, I want you to write down everything that you can remember. Don't judge it, don't censor it, just write it down. And I did. And I've published a book of essays. I'm not a fiction writer. I love fiction. I just don't write it very well. I'm an essayist, and I wanted to articulate to parents and husbands and wives and sons and daughters why their family member came home changed and what was going on and how they might communicate with him and maybe help him because there's so many hurdles. You have to understand that there's something broken inside of you. And then you have to agree to ask someone for help. And that's hard sometimes. And finally, you have to find that help. And it's not that available. and it's not confidential, and it's embarrassing, and you're going to be judged. And all of these good excuses to say, no, I'm broken, but I'm not going to ask for help. And we treat ourselves, we self medicate ourselves with alcohol and drugs and isolation and depression. And that is why roughly 22 people every day end their life. They say, stop the pain. I can't take it anymore. I really don't want to. This is not my idea of life. And that is a sad thing to me. Now, we talked about guilt. Um, I don't I don't want to judge. I'm not here to talk to you about what William Calley feels in his heart. Okay. Um, I was very badly wounded. I was so badly wounded I died. And yet, having gone through that and having performed honorably on that day in my life, I was struggling with survivor guilt. That's what it's called. Because I lived, and a lot of people that I cared about didn't come home. And isn't that absurd? You're going to be guilty because you live? Yeah.
I want to let James chime in. It looks like you have something to say.
Unmute, James.
I was just agreeing with. I totally. My heart goes out to you and so many other people who do make it home, because unfortunately, not always do you bring all your friends and brothers and sisters home. So I was just raising my hand in solidarity. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Not at all. Uh, yeah, it's one of those odd psychological ironies, but it's real. It's very hard to it's hard to understand, but it's real. And so what you end up doing is I had wealth, I had fame, I had affection, I had all of these great things, and I was still alive. They didn't expect me to live for more than 5 or 10 years, and here I still was. But I felt guilty about it, and so I set about trying to destroy it, and I got very good at it. I really did. And a couple of other veterans had the courage and cared enough about me to say, "You need to ask someone for help." They risked the friendship to do that. They gave me a book, and I looked at it, and as I said, I would. It's long time passing by. Um, it's a wonderful book of interviews with families and veterans, and I would read these 2 and 3 page stories. Jesus, that's what I do. That's how I think. That's how I feel. And that was what persuaded me. Yeah, you might benefit from getting some goddamn guidance. And life did get a whole lot better in 1988. But bear this in mind, 1988, I didn't apply for disability for PTSD until 2013. That's 25 years. Why? Because I had life. I had a good life. I didn't need anybody's help.
And you said 1988, just for folks who are unfamiliar, is the year you were diagnosed with PTSD, right?
Yes. And 2013, I applied for PTSD disability. I was already disabled for life from my injuries. But the point is, I had a good life, and I knew what people were in more need. But the guys told me, look, it's not about that. It's about the statistics. You have to file because the statistics determine how much is a portion for those veterans. And if you don't feel good about it, you can donate it.
So I want to jump in. You shared so many good thoughts. I want to give Terry a chance to speak, but just drawing on what Tucker was saying.
Yeah. A couple of things. Going back to Ajax with the warriors and what they're going through, and actually they're being kind of screwed with by the gods, right? The gods are intervening, and sometimes when you're out in service, it can feel like that. It can feel like, why me and why him and why did that happen? I mean, just things that are so random and so costly and so devastating. And there's no like rhyme or reason to it. So that's one of the really powerful things about that play, that tragedy, and what people experience. Going on to veterans benefits, Okay, one of the problems with the VA, there's so many problems we know, but there's so many good things, good benefits. I believe that every soldier, sailor, Marine, before they are discharged, should be processed through the VA. Right there, before they're even out of service, to identify what benefits they should be getting. Because so many of them don't know what those benefits are. And this is what people don't know, is that many of them think, I'm not going to put in for my benefits because I want the other guy to get it. And there's enough for everyone, or there has to be enough for everyone. So, I really encourage everyone, if you have a veteran in your life who has not gone to the VA to get their benefits, please encourage them to do so. And they can go to the DAV, Disabled American Veterans. They can go to the American Legion. They can go to the VFW and get assistance to do that, to process that. But it's crucial because so many veterans are missing out on not only financial assistance or benefits, not assistance, benefits. They've earned these, medical, and also community, because they will run into other veterans and have a chance at social interactions. So I just wanted to put that out.
Thank you, Terry. And thank you, Tucker. I want to close with a final question for the group and then give you the chance to say anything that we might not have covered. In my experience, former service members are most likely to participate in groups like this and in arts programming if they feel that they can not necessarily help themselves, but if they see it as a way to help others and to help fellow veterans. And that's a theme that I pick up from you all too, that part of the appeal of this sort of program is that you feel not just that you're pursuing it for your own good, but that it is also good for the larger community. The other point has to do with this multi-generational community that's being created here. We saw James identify with Tucker's points, and that's sort of another strength of this Ajax production, is that there are multiple people coming together there is no one universal experience of service. You all have unique perspectives. Just because you're all veterans does not mean you have one idea about what that means. So I welcome you to talk about those concepts, this idea of service members helping service members or doing service, and also the idea of multi-generational communication, or, like I said, any final thoughts that you want to put out there on this Veterans Day in 2020. Terry, I see you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay, well, I would say on this Veterans Day to every veteran out there, if you haven't, go find your people. Go find a group of veterans to connect with and to create new things with and new experiences. It's very healing. It's really wonderful. Writing is a good way. And I know a lot of people say, I don't write. Okay, don't write. But find a group of veterans, and it's very healing. And, thank you for your service.
Nicholas?
Oh, I would just echo the sentiments of everybody else, especially on this Veterans Day. I would say, that veteran experience. I agree with everything Terry said about benefits. For me, it went through quickly and easily, and I needed them when it happened, but it took me 20 years to get there. So I relate to what Tucker was saying also. I didn't even know. When I got out there wasn't a program that let you know benefits were available. And I also did it freely. I didn't want anything. I just wanted to serve my country. So it was a journey that got me to be able to even see what Tucker was talking about, because I didn't do this because I wanted to take anything. And I saw that taking, and it took me listening to other veterans, hearing them explain to me what was really going on, and then realizing, okay, I'm not taking anything. I mean, these are the benefits. And thankfully that I'm able to get through an experience and say to the next veteran, hey, apply for your benefits. Here's how you do it. Don't be discouraged if you're told no. Go right back and ask again. And I'm here to go with you. If you need me to hold space, I'll be right next to you, making sure you get through this process. and that's that, that each one
Right.
teach one, each one reach one, and hopefully that keeps going. You know what I mean? So that's really
Thanks,
all I have.
Nicholas. Any others? Final thoughts? Tucker.
Yes.
Oh, Diana, Tucker, and then Diana. Or Diana and then Tucker, please.
Yes. Thank you very much for your service. You veterans hold a very special place in my heart, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. That takes a lot of courage, and no one's going to look down on you. And if they do, it's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. So yeah, that's my sense.
Tucker.
I was, as I said, I was a commander and I was a military advisor. Some days I didn't speak English. Feeling is something that's very close to me, but it's because of my training as an actor. But I was emotionally shut down all during that time. But to feel is to be alive. The the part about shutting down the emotions is not part of life. It's part of being stoic and just doing the job. Okay. I think about this wonderful play Ajax, which is eons old, and the similarity. People are surprised. Gee whiz, soldiers 2,000, 4,000 years ago feel the same things we do. Well, yeah, because it's war. Now, we know that Ajax was bewitched by Athena, okay? That's not what PTSD is, it's a metaphor, all right? However, in my research about this play, I discovered that not only did Ajax kill a whole lot of sheep and goats and cows, he killed a lot of goats herds and herders and slaves and children. Those are people, okay? That's literal. And that will haunt you. You can kill all the goats you want to, and it might upset you, but you kill a few goats herds, that should keep you up at night. And I think it did him. And I don't know that that is as clearly delineated as it might be.
Thank you, Tucker. I want to thank everyone for participating today. It has been my honor and my pleasure to meet you and to talk with you and to talk about this amazing project, which, as James and Lizzie both said, even though we are trapped in our little digital boxes, in a way we can look at this positively as actually increasing access, because now many, many more can benefit from the incredible work that you've all done. So thank you for including me in the event, and thank you all for your candid thoughts. It's been my honor.
Thank you, Lizzie Ross and EST.
So we have one request from a viewer for the veterans to tell us what your branch of service is, and to thank you all for your service today on Veterans Day, of course. But Tara, do you want to talk about your branch of service, and then we'll go around to the other veterans?
Do I want to talk about my...
Tell us your branch of service. And
Oh, my branch of service was the Army.
I was an Army infantry military advisor and commander in Vietnam.
United States Air Force air traffic controller.
James?
United States Marine Corps. Oh, yours.
Welcome. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
And Diana?
Semper Fi, United States Marine Corps.
Semper Fi.
thank you all. Thank you for everything you did to this, and my respect to you all. Be well, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans
Same
Day.
to you.
Welcome home. Welcome home.
Exactly.
Welcome home.